available from the Corolla.
Our Creator and source of our life, you allow diversity even in beliefs not to divide us, but rather to make us see that despite of it, there is something common that binds us all. In this part of our conference, we pray that in our differences we may strive for unity, and in doing so, achieve peace, especially in this time of COVID-19 pandemic. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Saint Francis Assisi, pray for us.
Friends and colleagues, welcome to this intercultural forum where we hope to listen to our resource persons share about the dynamics of inclusion and exclusion in the context of the COVID pandemic. Allow me to acknowledge our main partners in this endeavor. And first, I'd like to begin with our main conference partner, Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, GIZ. Our main forum partners, our friends from Philippine Normal University, Mindanao, and Notre Dame of Jolo. We also have one speaker from Ateneo de Davao. With the diverse cultural contexts of our speakers, and with the experiences they are bringing to the table this afternoon, we hope to have a fruitful and relevant discussion and sharing. And so, on behalf of the board and administration of FSUU, I welcome you to this event. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Intercultural Forum of the Mindanao Peace Studies Conference 6 of Father Saturnino Urios University. This is in partnership with Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, or GIZ. I am Sherlyn Midority Alegre from FSUU, and I am your facilitator in this session. I would like to welcome our participants from various government and non-government agencies, as well as those coming from the academe, the private higher education institutions, state and local colleges and universities, the Department of Education, the different representatives of the indigenous communities in Mindanao, and religious organizations who are joining us via Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube channel of the university. Joining us also this afternoon on FB is are from the Washington, D.C., New Jersey, California, and Canada. We also acknowledge our speakers who will be introduced accordingly in a while. The theme for this intercultural forum is Dynamics of Inclusion and Exclusion in the Context of COVID-19 Pandemic. We shall now proceed with our program. To facilitate a seamless flow in the online conference, let us follow our session rules. First, all participants are encouraged to mute their microphones at the start of every session. The organizer also reserves the right for this action. For documentation purposes, all the proceedings of the conference shall be recorded and pictures will be taken during the session. To ensure proper recognition, participants are encouraged to indicate the name of their organization before their names. If you have not done this yet, please rename your account using this format. At this point, may I turn you over to the session moderator, Mr. Philip L. Anghag.
Greetings of peace from the ancestral domain of the Obo Manobo of Mount Apo. My name is Philip Largo Anghag. I'm moderating from Kidapawan City, North Cotabato, currently partnering with the Manobo Apao descendants of Mount Apo or Madadma, the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, North Cotabato Province, and the Energy Development Corporation. I am the moderator for this session. Here are the discussion overview and mechanics. Each speaker is given 15 minutes for his or her presentation. Please observe the allocated time so that the speakers, participants, and forum will also have their chance to ask their questions. When the speaker's time is up, we will immediately proceed to the next presenter. After all the presentations, a short panel discussion follows and then an open forum. For the open forum, the Zoom participants may write their questions on the chat box. For those who are participating through Facebook and YouTube, you may likewise write your questions in the comment section. The Secretariat will keep track of your questions and will forward it to us. You can ask one direct, concise question, and if needed, one follow-up question. There will be documenters who will record the process and the questions raised for this session. Are all our presenters connected and ready? Let us now begin with the presentation. The first presenter in this forum comes from the Manobo community in Loreto, Agusan del Sur. He finished a degree in Bachelor of Elementary Education, but found himself in the service of the people of Loreto as an officer of the local government unit. At present, he serves as a Sangguniang Bayan member of the municipality of Loreto and as the provincial tribal secretary of Agusan del Sur. Fellow peace builders, I give you the first presenter of this forum, Mr. Reiki Q. Angos.
Madadyaw ng mahapon iyo tibo. Good afternoon, everyone. Don't you know that I am right now at the LGU quarantine facility of Loreto? Yes, I am now on my 11th day already. Anyway, welcome to the 6th Mindanao Peace Studies Conference, and thank you for inviting me as one of your resource persons, being a son of the Manobo tribe, to talk about topics on dynamics of inclusion and exclusion in the context of COVID-19 pandemic under the Intercultural Forum, and share with you few of our cultural experiences, stories, narratives, practices, and responses under the new normal as an aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic. I hope this humble presentation would somehow help the academe and the peace advocates to come up with strategic and significant solutions towards lasting peace and development, especially in the IP communities under the new normal. Please take notice, the slides are colorful because I use the Manobo colors, red, yellow, black, and white. Next. Next. Next slide. To better understand the tribe's humble beginning, allow me to discuss first the ethnic origin of the Manobo tribe in Caraga Region 13. The Manobo ethnic group is the intermarriage offspring between the Mangguyangan tribe and the river people from Malay Peninsula. The Mangguyangans were the original inhabitants or aborigines of Caraga region, particularly in central Agusan and Agusan marshland. Next. The photo shows the Mangguyangan tribe. Next. And these photos were the river people from the Malay Peninsula. Next. Participants, allow me to illustrate this slide. The Malays were called the river people. River means Suba. Suba is their dwelling place. People means man. If we connect man, people plus Suba, dwelling, the word is Mansuba. And its metamorphosed is Manuba. Man, people plus Uba, dwelling. Later, they called themselves Manubo. Man plus Ubu. And using the masculine gender, man plus Ubo, the result is Manobo. Next. Nowadays, the Manobo tribe has three major types. Number one, the traditional Manobos. They are the customary law holders and their families. Please look carefully the pictures. As shown, the Bailan being the priest or religious authority of the tribe, performing the ritual called Yognatan in order to protect their newly inducted tribal leader or Datu. The ritual Yognatan is one of the Manobo traditional practices. Next. Number two, the half mainstream Manobos. They are the educated, yet still observing the customs and practices. One of the pictures showed a Manobo professional performing saot or dance with the Bailan during the Yognatan ritual. Next. There are members of the tribe or individuals who lived in highly urbanized cities and in other countries who are no longer observing Manobo beliefs, practices, and tradition. The influence of this church, the influence of their church or religion is the significant reason. They called the full mainstream Manobos. Next. Effects of pandemic. Number one, because of their strong belief to Magbabaja, God the Father Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, to deities, to spirits or diwata. Pandemic has no ill effects in the health of the traditional Manobos. They are not afraid of the virus because they believe in the rituals called Sangha and Higad. Sangha ritual is to appease the spirits that cause the illness, while Higad ritual is to appease the Yumud and Alimugkat as carrier of the disease when there is an epidemic or plague. As we know, worldwide, epidemic turned into pandemic. One considerable reason in the remotest areas is that the distance of Manubo household from their neighbors is 1 kilometer apart. That is the least. Hence, they don't afraid to be contaminated by the virus. Aside from their faith to Magbabaja, they also have the trust to the government because they knew that before anyone enters their territory, authorities have already contained the possible entry of the virus. Next. Number 2, look at the picture. The traditional manobos in Barangay Kasapa, the farthest barangay of Loreto. During the kahimunan or meeting called by the authorities, they had no face mask. They did not observe social distancing. These protocols are not their way of life. They don't care about the virus. Life is normal for them. They are not horrified by the virus because aside from the absence of contacts from the outside of their territories, their beliefs to Magbabaja and other deities are strong. Next. Far different from the military and the NCIP personnel who observed health protocols as they conducted the 3-day peace building seminar. The military reached to the remotest barangay identified as red area just to provide government aids and services to the tribe in relation to pandemic. Next. In Agusan, Mars, the traditional Manobo children on their boats, the wearing of face masks is not their prime concern. Why? Because the virus cannot enter into the marshland since there is no arrival of local and foreign tourists in the area, which somehow affects their livelihood. Next. Number 2, the tremendous and sudden effects of our economy, as we call it, economic recession. The livelihood of people is greatly affected and becomes abnormal. The half mainstream Manobos living in rural and urban areas, and the full mainstream living in highly urbanized cities and other countries, had lost their jobs and all, due to the compliance of health protocols and community quarantines imposed by government authorities. Next. Despite all of the effects as shown in the picture, the half mainstream Manobos, the Kadti Council of Elders with the IPMRs, while attending an orientation about the safety and health protocols conducted by the NCIP Satellite Office, Loreto, they followed carefully, observed the wearing of face masks and social distancing. The other picture shows the Manobo LGU scholars post after their meetings. Next. It is a fact that many idle lands within the ancestral domain of the Manobo tribe are not cultivated at present. One of the advantages is that when the municipal government distributed about 3 sacks of rice already per household from April to September 2020, the tribe had an opportunity to cultivate their idle lands by planting bananas because they had sufficient food to eat. Next. Not only are the men, but IP women in rural and urban areas, while staying at home due to quarantine protocols, they use their time collecting and planting flowers, not just to beautify their homes, but they learn the so-called online business. Flowers in pots are now sold online. Next. Some of the advantages of the pandemic. Number 1, tribes were given equal opportunity to avail government services and assistance. Next. The imposition of courtesy and discipline by the government authorities was fairly experienced by all, IP and non-IP alike. No discrimination, no rich or poor, educated or illiterate. They experienced the same treatment. Next. Amongst several disadvantages, IP communities identify three major disadvantages. Number one, mobility of people. At the height of the enhanced community quarantine, no transportation allowed, COVID-19 checkpoints are all over places. The IP activities were momentarily curtailed. Movements of tribal chieftains, datu, and council of elders from one place to another were stopped. Remember that staying at home is not their culture because the Manobos are nomadic in characteristic. They roam around in search for their foods or for their livelihood. Next. Financial crisis. Number two. All forms of financial problem are experienced by all up to this time. The effects of lockdown are remarkable. Business establishments were closed, no income for their families because IPs lost their jobs. Many of the Manobos working in cities like Metro Manila, Davao City, Cebu City returned home jobless. Next. Number three, education is the most affected because about 90% of the IP children, especially in poor rural and forest mountainous areas, they have no gadget, no touch screen cellular phones, no desktop computers, no laptop, no Wi-Fi, no signal and all. The impact is IP children stop their schooling. Enrollment had reduced. Modular blended learning and online or distance learning are not their way of life. Next. On peace and order situation, the pandemic or new normal served as a temporary solution, despite that there was no ceasefire declared by the government. Generally speaking, the IP or tribal communities are peaceful because in the remotest barangays identified by the military as red area, no encounter between the government troops against the enemies, and reduction of criminality in urban and rural areas, especially the drug-related crimes. Next. The Manobo beliefs, customs, and tradition, as we call it, kinabaka, nagimba, liningka na buyawan, minamos na tibud, nakagdalihig na yana. In other words, this is our batasan sinadyahan, beut sinabinitan. Our beliefs, practices, customary laws, and tradition. Next. To anchor them on the four basic rights of the tribe under the IPRA law or Republic Act 8371, kinabaka nagimba is our rights to self-governance. Liningka na buyawan is our rights to cultural integrity. Minamos na tibod, our rights to justice and human rights. Nahagdalihig na yana, our rights to ancestral domain. The onslaught of logging industry in our ancestral domain was the beginning of chaos in IP territories, which resulted to killings and eventually insurgency, because our basic rights were not recognized and respected. They destroyed our forests and mountains, our sacred place and burial grounds were not respected, and eventually they grabbed our lands. Next. Because of injustices done to our forests and domains by the greedy, abusive culprits of the society, and considering that this is a Mindanao Peace Studies Conference, may I share to you the Sugilan or short story entitled The Cry of the Manobo. We are the Manobo, this is our land, we were born here and we will die here. The story was narrated by the Manobo tribe of Kasapa and our Galian Kapuod or ancestor, the late Hawodon Kugbahan Tagliyong Kugit, considered as the greatest supreme ruler or dato of Manobo tribe in Mindanao. The Sugilan tells us that roots of war and insurgency in our land were due to the coming of the migrants, investors, companies, and rich individuals who ventured logging industry in our ancestral domain. Next. They did not respect the tribe. They trespass our batasan, sinadyahan, buot, sinabinitan, our beliefs, customs, and tradition. They destroyed our ancestral domain through illegal logging. These were the roots of war and insurgency. We will renew today our battle cry. We are the Manobos, ready to defend our rights, protect our lands, even if it costs our lives. We are ready to kill and to be killed until to the last drop of our blood and to the last breath of our heart. We are born Bagani or warrior of the tribe, ready to die and defend our people and our territory. Next. The cry of the Manobos, and may I quote as they said, we are the Manobo, this is our land. We were born here and we will die here. This is our legacy that we will not forget. Our rights and sacred grounds when trampled and trespassed, we will hunt the guilty until they gnash their teeth forever. Stop lumad killings. Respect our ancestral domain. IPRA law must be upheld. Finally, pandemic must not be the reason the IPs will be left behind again, especially under the new normal. This is our prayer. Dudumahan kinaw daw kayo ujan ni magbabadya. May God the Creator be with us and have mercy on us. Amen. Next. Finally, allow me to express my sincere thanks and gratitude to this rare
Thank you.
opportunity. The Philippine Normal University Mindanao, PNU, my alma mater, through Dr. Elvira B. Choa, Executive Director and Provost, to Dr. Edelberta C. Gusi, my classmate, Director, Center for Multicultural Education, to Father Saturnino Urios University through Reverend Father Randy Jasper C. Uchiki, Vice President for Academic Affairs. Thank you so much. Special thanks to Hawodon Malinog-Linog, Honorable Hilario Bibero, Municipal IPMR, Ms. Maridel M. Castolo, Officer in charge of the NCIP Satellite Office, and Honorable Filipio A. Labadan Jr., Punong Barangay o Poblasyon, Loreto Agusan del Sur, and the Municipal Information Office and the Shine Loreto Bibo Loreto page group account. Next. Thanks for learning. Salamat Yagboy iyo tibo, madajaw na mahapon.
Thank you, Sir Ricky, for your sharing. Um, the second presenter is the coordinator for Salam Movement of the Ateneo de Davao University, a youth lead group and youth serving program that focuses on positive peace building and preventing violent extremism among in-school and grassroots level youth in Mindanao. As project officer of this movement, she spearheaded a group of youth leaders who are refined to be Mindanao's homegrown peace champions and has worked with local and international organizations alike in implementing relevant findings before bigger national and international platforms. She has also taken part in different development projects which were presented both in national and international venues. These efforts have recently been highlighted as she was recognized by the 2030 project as their SDG 16 Youth Champions in 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Fatima Star U Lamalan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon to everyone, or greetings of the day to anyone who's listening and who's from a different time zone. Yes, thank you so much for that introduction and for mentioning the work that we do in the Salam movement and the Ateneo de Davao University. I would like to share my screen, and we do have only 15 minutes, so I would like to keep this intact. And so please um, bear with me as I try to share this one. So, right there. This afternoon, again, good afternoon. I will be speaking about sharing a little bit of what we do on the dynamics and on the dynamics of inclusion and exclusion in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, I am Fatima Lalamalan. I am the project coordinator for Salam Movement of the Ateneo de Davao University. And just to give you a bit of what we do exactly in the Salam Movement, I would like to share this video. So
No matter our paths, we can always come to a point where we can meet. We value the voice of every single one of us. This is Salam Movement.
Being involved in Salam Movement has paved the way for me to discover and learn about different cultures I normally wouldn't be exposed to just in our household. Each activity gives me new learnings, a much bigger vision and hope for a peacefully diverse Mindanao wherein there is a reciprocal understanding within the hearts of each Mindanaoan.
The lack of dialogue among the youth of Mindanao is the main antecedent of the continuous repudiation of marginalized sectors across generations in the region. It is our duty as responsible Filipino citizens to build bridges of conferment among the youth across cultures and ethnicities that have beset the peace-building progress of Mindanao.
Volunteering for Salam Movement has sustained me an avenue to get involved with socio-political issues which are prevalent in our
Safety or
society
technical
now.
team,
Through
walang
Salam Corps,
hindi
volunteers are equipped to become empowered youth who are competent to handle and have dialogue about socio-political
City.
issues and positive peace-building initiatives for the tribe people, the Muslims, Christians, and Lamans by being exposed to various skill development trainings and seminars.
In Salam Movement, we want to bring everyone to the table. In Salam, we want to build bridges by working towards peace.
Sa Salam Movement, nagalimod kami pantag sa kariligan.
Adi sang Salam Movement, yag katapo-tapo kita para mapangimunal yang kalinaw.
Saya sa Salam Movement na matitimo kami ka masisingani nami so kalilintag.
Diri sa Salam Movement, nagkahiusami para sa kalinaw.
Dito sa Salam Movement,
Kami ay nagtitipon-tipon
Para sa kapayapaan.
Here at Salam Movement,
we gather for peace.
And together, empower the youth and grow generations.
all right. So that was the audiovisual presentation for Salam Movement, and as you can see, the different the multi people of Mindanao is presented in this and showed as a microcosm of what Mindanao, the diverse, beautifully diverse Mindanao should be in our society. So what we basically do is these things we have summarized it into fire, formation, instruction, research, and engagement. Mostly because we are under an academic institution, that is the Ateneo de Davao University, and also being supervised by the Al-Kalam Institute for Islamic Identities and Dialogue in Southeast Asia. But Salam Movement is more of the youth leg of these efforts. And so here I am showing you guys a map of our community engagement. So we work mostly in Mindanao, and I would also like to start off from this map. So as you can see here, there are areas that I have emphasized. And this is because from these areas, working with Salam Movement, we have done a lot of consultative meetings, got together with people, just trying to, just trying to see the context, individual context of conflict and how we can counter this in their local communities. And so peace building has used to be, about answering the questions to why, these comments came from our participants in our consultative meetings, and they will be like having these questions of why they're stereotyped as Muslims wearing the hijab, or um, peace building used to be about giving education opportunities for those who are being recruited into violent extremist organizations in Holo. And these are young people fleeing to Tawi-Tawi because they are being recruited by violent extremist organizations. Peace building used to be about, pre-pandemic, um, it used to be about these kids who are being trained by these. And it's also about, you know, giving solutions to, how violent extremist organizations have now been so advanced that they are giving out already registration forms to be part of their groups in institutions in the far-flung areas of Mindanao. These are happening. These are actual narratives in our communities. And these aren't even just that, because just in the past 5 years, I'm only talking about the past 5 years, and this is only the life of Salam movement. All of these things already happened in Mindanao. In 2016, there was the Davao night market bombing that killed 14 people and left 60 others wounded. In 2017, it I couldn't even talk about how tragic this was, but it left more than 100,000 only profiled. That's only the number of the profiled um, IDPs, internally displaced peoples. In 2018, there was also a bombing in Basilan that left 10 people killed. In 2019, the bombing in Our Lady of Mount Carmel, which killed 23 people and left more than 100 injured. And the saddest part is, just this year, even amidst the pandemic, back-to-back explosions in downtown Holo that killed 14 people and injured 75 others. So what I'm trying to say is, before the pandemic, peace building used to be about this, about resolving this. And if you can see a pattern here, if you can see about, what these main events are about, there is always, not in a single one of these events was not a Muslim, quote unquote, was involved. And so people would start stigmatizing, etc., and discriminating. And it's because, in every single one of these, we are involved. We are either the victims, or we are either the perpetrators or the victims. And this is sad. Peace building has been always like this, until suddenly the pandemic happened and peace building has become about economics now. So the context now is, how do we, and the answer that we need to, the question that we need to answer is, how do we, keep them, their tummies full? How do we feed our people? How do we keep them from fighting over resources? Because suddenly peace building has become about economics. And these are major challenges that we have encountered in doing peace building work amidst the pandemic. The first one is, and this is sad that it's still happening, exclusivity and othering. So there is always the negative apprehensions by the communities we engage. First, this is because mostly we are intercultural. So our initiatives are reach out to not just Muslims, but to other brothers and sisters of other faith and other cultural backgrounds. And there is always this apprehension that, Muslims cannot be trusted. So, however, we are of course getting over this one. Another one is negative perception of diversity, which is kind of also connected to the first one. There's always the dynamics of intra and interfaith, intra and intercultural, and inter-civilizational marginalization. There's still always that. The third one is this one, and this is kind of the most important thing here: shift to virtual settings. Because again, I do agree with Sir Ricky Angwas. Not everyone cannot, not everyone can access, this kind of setting. And so, in that sense, if we want to be inclusive, how do we try to address this loophole? You know, the next one is horizontal cooperations. Interagency, multi-sectoral level partnerships has become harder now that the pandemic is in. It used to be hard even without it. So are vertical cooperations, community to government initiatives have also been harder when the pandemic came. Now, I would like to stress, how do we get over these major challenges that we have seen, these challenges at least that we're trying to confront? And we really put our trust in the youth. And so by putting our trust in the youth, we mean them having these, and we root for them as they do this one. The first one is creative approaches. The youth is full of idealism. The youth is very creative. We have access to so many tools, and this one really helps a lot in doing cross-cultural initiatives even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And not only does this apply to Muslim youth or Muslim young leaders, but everyone as well. The second one is highlighting positive narratives. This is what the youth is really good about. And this is this is helpful in the sense that we are in a time when we are really down and we're losing hope. And there's always the youth that can highlight positive narratives of there are still continuing efforts even amidst things. Third is research and well-informed societies. Of course, we need to fact check, we need to do research, we need to have a well-informed society, and the youth can help very much in this one through the use of social and traditional media outlets. And this one is probably the greatest thing that the youth can leverage. Although these social and traditional media outlets can also be really harmful, but this can also be leveraged in a very positive way. And the youth is probably the sector that's really fitted to adapting to this one rather. And lastly, mainstreaming discussions on peace building. More and more young people have realized and have taken up their role in peace building even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And I will be giving examples of how our youth are now helping with this one. Starting off with this, Salam movement organized this iftar drive fundraising campaign, and this was organized rather by the Athenaeum Muslim Society. So just a group of young people wanting to make a change, and we were able to give out a total of 155,000, more than that, donations to those severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And take note, these are young people leading these, and these are Muslim young people. So in that, we can see hope that the Muslim young people are taking up space, and we are trying to lead now. Here are just some photos of when we actually implemented our activities and gave out to. And if you can also notice, the communities that were helped and supported by these Muslim youths are not exclusively Muslim. And so we can see here, the intercultural dynamics, we can feel, that the sense of inclusivity and inclusiveness. And these are just young kids. And also, we have started out with our virtual activities. We are also participating in the virtual activities of other organizations where we are invited just so to make sure that we grab every opportunity, even despite, being hard, even despite movement being hard nowadays. So we're still doing everything that we can do, still maximizing every tool that we can use. And these are just examples of these ones. And of course, this, I would like to highlight this one because this is an activity of the Al Kalam Institute for Islamic Identities and Dialogue in Southeast Asia, where we are housed under. And these Bitiala online, Bitiala, by the way, is a Magindanaoan term for dialogue. And it has, we have been doing this for since Al Kalam started in 2011, and now we have shifted online just to make sure we continue the discussion for everyone. And we also have here Usapang Alkalam every Wednesday. This is a radio program also initiated by the Ateneo de Davao University. So these are just some of the things that the Alkalam does and the Ateneo de Davao University does even amidst the pandemic. And so here is the Salam Corps. Sir was able to mention during the introduction the Salam Corps. I would like to emphasize this group of young people because, as you may see, these are 50 young people, but they come from different, you know, religious and different faith and cultural backgrounds. We have members who are Muslims, who are IPs, who are Christians, or who do not even, believe at anything at all. So it doesn't really matter just how they can make a change. And so this is just a beautiful microcosm of what a Mindanao should be. And we're really still hopeful of the Salam Corps. And we do have a lot of activities coming forward, especially that we have partnered with the GIZ and the UCAP. So we are still looking forward to how a group of people from different backgrounds, whom we have always thought of to, it's just impossible for Muslims, IPs, Christians to work together and, you know, for a common goal. But then here we see these young people doing it, initiating it. So here, ways forward, it doesn't end there. It doesn't end with with our initiatives during the pandemic, and it doesn't end with just a single sector doing it. We need to and collaborate and move forward together. The government, the academe, religious sectors, civil society organizations, security sector, and the youth. You all need to work together to move forward, create a positive change, even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic that has, apparently hindered a lot of things that we could have done without it. So thank you very much. That would be all from me. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't exceed my time limit. Again, this has been Fatima Story Lalamalan from Salam Movement. Thank you very much. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Ms. Star, for sharing your experiences with us for the substantial presentation. The third presenter is a member of the Sama tribe and Hulu Sulu. She is a faculty and clinical instructor of Notre Dame of Hulu College. Her work experience includes community organizing and development, conflict management, and peace advocacy. Her community immersion and medical mission were conducted among the Bajau communities in Simporna, Sabah, Malaysia, and recently among those in the province of Sulu. Peace Builders, our third speaker, Miss Siti Lukaya OC. I pronounce it right, and pardon if I did not. Miss City? Go ahead, Miss City.
Hello, Miss City. Paki-unmute po ng mic nyo.
Hello, hello. Hello, okay na ho, ma'am? Okay na?
Okay na po.
So I am a health worker, frontliner, from the very beginning. Okay, my name is Siti Lukaya at Susi. I am from Esama tribe, a Muslim. By birth, I came from Lang Tabawan, South Tubian, Tawi-Tawi. And I am an OMI scholar, Oblate of Mary Immaculate Congregation. I am a health worker, frontliner. I am connected with the Notre Dame Mobolo College, Holosulu as clinical instructor and faculty of the Health Sciences Department Midwifery Program. I am the Asia Foundation, Freeman Foundation Fellow in the United States 2005, a Hubert H. Humphrey Fellow in the United States from 2008 to 2009. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Darren Vidatiles for the recommendation to our Health Sciences Department family for the invaluable support and guidance, and most especially to Father Saturnino Urios University in Butuan for the invitation. This afternoon, I would like to talk. Can I have my presentation, Homan? I would like to talk and share with you about my work engagement and activities with the tribe people, especially the Bajau communities in the province of Sulu. These include, can I have my presentation, ma'am? These include works before COVID-19 pandemic, works during COVID-19 pandemic, and leadership educational exposure outside of the Philippines. Now, supposedly I have my presentation. Hello, ma'am.
Yes po, we're still preparing po the slides.
Okay.
Okay, thank you po.
I just wait for a while, ma'am. Okay, thanks. So I will be talking this afternoon about my works with the tribe people, my experiences with the tribe people, especially among the Bajau community in the province of Sulu. Next slide, please. So I mentioned about it already. I will be talking three topics for discussion next week. So I would like to share with you the location of my home place and my working place. The picture on top is the municipality of Jolo, that is in the province of Cebu, where Notre Dame of Jolo College is located. And I'm here right now. The picture below is my home place, that is South Tubian, Laong Tabawan, South Tubian, Tawi-Tawi, and that is located in the southern tip of the Philippines. Next slide. Now, Notre Dame of Jolo College was founded on June 14, 1954. It has grown and has in no small measure covered senior high and tertiary education of respectable quality in the entire Sulu and Tawi-Tawi. It is owned and managed by an Oblate of Mary Immaculate congregation, yet it serves predominantly Muslim populace. Its community extension services and peace center are the college's best features, for these cater to the needs of the minority Bajaus as well as the indigenous Tausug community. Bajau or Bajau means man of the seas. This tribal group is known as the Sea Gypsies because they move with the wind and the tide on their small houseboats called vintas. They can be found in many coastal settlements and inhabit the waters and shores of the Sulu archipelago, according to Ronald De Jong. A number of the Bajau families have consistently transferred from one area to another because of their difficulty in meeting the bare needs of economic subsistence, by Theo Saladin. Bajau women are usually responsible in reproductive work such as cooking, preparing cassava for aging for edibles, gathering firewood, cleaning the house, and caring for children, by Willie Torres III. Their families are engaged in fishing and use their houseboats mooring around sea waters. Bajau mother and her daughter are preparing food for the family in the household, by Arlonino. Now, my works before COVID-19 pandemic. As a healthcare worker, health coordinator of the Community Extension Service of the college, in partnership with other program stakeholders, both from the private, from the public sectors, and civic society organizations, we implemented community-based health programs. These include community health food visits, house-to-house visitations, herbal gardening Botica sa Paso project, perinatal care for mothers, health leadership and management skills seminar training for barangay health workers, provision of first aid kit to barangay health workers in the island municipalities, basic health skills seminar for Bajau mothers and parents. We also conducted mothers class. We conducted free medical and dental mission, community-based health leadership and management skills training for traditional leaders, faith healers, barangay health workers, and religious leaders in Tabawan, Tawi-Tawi, Barm, Philippines, supported by Institute of International Education USA as Alumni Impact Award Project 2010. For the health-related projects and activities, these include Back to School Project, Humphrey Barangay. In this project, we distributed school supplies to school children in the different target communities. And this project was funded and supported by the Humphrey Alumni Philippines. Community organizing for Barangay Health Call Group adopted CS communities. Culture of Peace, Conflict Management, and Transformation Training to both Bajau community and local leaders. This project was funded by the Asia Foundation Philippines. And finally, assisted the Livelihood Project for unemployed Bajau women. With this, I would like to share with you some photos that we had during our implementation, or for those activities, projects that we had been implemented and initiated. as you can see, we utilize motorized boat, pump boat, small boat, a paddle boat in the area. So we really conducted field visits and house-to-house visitation among the Bajaus and also the Tausug indigenous community. We had also our mother's class, both in the mainland and in the island communities in the province of Sulu. We included the parents, the husband, so that they will be also have knowledge about basic health practices to support the mother and child. With this, as you can see, we had also trainings for the students, the basic health skills training for the students, and also the barangay health call group. We provided them with a free medical kit, first aid kit, so that they have something to use before referral to the main health center and hospital, because it is a far distance from the island communities. So we need to prepare them. Now, in our other health-related programs, as you can see, we gave school supplies, and we also conducted feeding program among school children. This program is also in partnership, or was in partnership with the Department of Education and the local government units. All our activities in the health program were always in partnership with the Department of Health. We also have the livelihood project for unemployed women. So we have sewing. That's why at NDJC, we have the NDJC Cottage Industry Incorporated. Now, for work during COVID-19 pandemic, organized NDJC Pandemic Management and Response Team initiated activities, and I'm one of the members as the healthcare frontliner. To include, we had conducted seminar orientation and advocacy on COVID-19 among students and employees, distributed face masks, face shields, other protective medical supplies to program partners and other local government units, coordinated the Holo Municipal Interagency Task Force COVID-19 for inbound NDJC employees and visitors who were accommodated at NDJC quarantine facilities. Next is assisted in the health monitoring of employees, school visitors, and implementation of minimum health protocol to school quarantine facilities, facilitated communications, clearances, health certification of the completed quarantine employees and visitors, facilitated employees, authorized person of outside residents for referral, hospitalization, and logistic support. With this, I would like to share with you some photos for our activities, projects that have been initiated and implemented during this COVID-19 pandemic. So as you can see, we partner with the different frontliners in the community, included the military, also with the local government units and the Department of Health sector. And finally, for the leadership educational exposure, I want to share with you that I had been into outside of the Philippines. One is educational loyalty field exposure for NDJC loyalty awardees to Hong Kong and Macau, China in 2017. A Hubert H. Humphrey Fellowship Program in the United States in from 2008 to 2009. So during this time, I had my academic units at Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine, New Orleans, in Louisiana. For my English language and international program, I took it at the University of California, Santa Cruz Extension, Santa Cruz, California, and had my professional affiliation at Emory University School of Medicine, Department of Gynecology and Obstetrics in Atlanta, Georgia. Next is the observation program on religion and society in the United States for Southeast Asian emerging leaders. This is the Asian Foundation, Freeman Foundation in the United States Cultural Affairs Program in the United States in 2005. Community immersion in Bajau communities in partnership with the Asian Public Intellectual Fellow, Nippon Foundation, Sir Willie Torres III, in Sempurna, Sabah, Malaysia. During this time, we conducted health assessment, consultation, and free medical mission with the Bajau communities in Mindanao, in Bangau, and other Bajau communities in Sempurna, Sabah, Malaysia. And finally, approved abstract for poster presentation, midwifery among the Bajau community Philippines. This will be during the International Confederation for Midwife or of Midwife, this coming June 1 to 3, 2021 in Bali, Indonesia. The submission of abstract was in partnership with Dr. Jennifer W. Foster of Emory University School of Nursing and Lillian Carter Center in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. I would like to share with you some photos of my exposure outside of the Philippines. As you can see, we've been fortunate to have photos with US President Jimmy Carter. We've been very thankful that time. And also we visited some of the agencies that we've been trained in our leadership skills. Next slide. Okay, this one, I would like to share with you the photos of the Nawan Sampurna that would be inhabited by Bajau families. In Bangau also Sampurna. And we've been fortunate to visit Hong Kong and Macau, China for our incentive as loyalty award of the college. Now, finally, I would like to end up my talk with this quotation: never give up to do good things and humbly share blessings in any means, for which fulfillment is a real peace and happiness in life. That would be all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Siti, for your sharing. Our fourth speaker is a full-blooded Mandaya from Caraga, Davao Oriental, Philippines. From her parents, she nurtures an unwavering belief that education is a tool by which indigenous communities assert for recognition of the rights to self-determination. Her education was very relevant in her endeavors in promoting development programs and projects for the tribal communities, education, and peace-building initiatives, and in achieving key positions in various government and non-government organizations in the country. As part of the group who helped conceptualize APO Governance and Indigenous Leadership Academy, or AGILA, she takes the lead as its executive director since 2015 up to the present. Ladies and gentlemen and fellow peace seekers, our fourth and last speaker in this forum is Ms. Norma M. Gunos. Okay, while waiting for Ma'am Gunos, we shall have our 10-minute health break. We shall see you after 10 minutes and we will hear Ms. Norma M. Gunos. Welcome back to our Intercultural Forum for Mindanao Peace Studies Conference 6. At this point, let us hear our last speaker for this forum, Ms. Norma M. Gunos. Ma'am Norma.
Yes po.
Good afternoon po. You
Yeah.
can start na po, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Kalayo kadayo do nagabila kamayo tibo. Peace and good afternoon to everyone. I think I was already introduced as Executive Director of Wapo Governance and Indigenous Leadership Academy. But for this afternoon, I am here to share my own experience on the dynamics of inclusion and exclusion in the context of COVID, because I myself had that experience as far as exclusion and inclusion of COVID pandemic is concerned. And I have this harrowing experience when I was quarantined myself. I went home to our community because I feel I was safe. But when I reached my community, well, I had to abide with the government that everyone who comes should confine themselves as in the facility. But I was so glad that I asked them to quarantine me in our own home, provided that only me and my husband will be there. Another harrowing experience is that of knowing that people whom you are willing to lay down your life are the ones who are afraid to get near you because they were not well informed of the dynamics of COVID or any idea on what COVID is all about. There was no information and educational materials written in our Mandaya language where the Mandaya people will be able to really understand what COVID is all about. After my quarantine period, I was looking for Inay Anting, a senior citizen, a chanter and weaver in our community, on why she kept herself in the remote place or hinterland in our hometown. She told me she rushed back to the mountains because they were told that COVID is coming. I asked if who is COVID. She said, "No, I do not know whether it is human or what. I am only told that it brings an ailment that has no cure." I asked who told her. She cannot even tell specific person because she said everyone is talking about it. And so she just hurriedly packed her things. And that means it will show to us that everyone, including people or frontliners in our hometown, were not able to come up with their own indigenous materials where Mandaya people will be able to understand what COVID is all about. I asked friends from LGU, the IPMR, and IATF local command, but no material or easily understood illustrations were written in our language. There's none available. There were information campaign, but only barangay captains, principals of the schools, but senior citizens and those under 21 years of age were not included. So one time I asked Manay Padong, another Balyan in our community, on what measures they have done to protect the community from this pandemic. And she told me, I just offered ritual, prayer, and chanting to the spirits of our ancestors to protect the people. And so indeed, of course, not to boast, no one in our community is known to have suffered or infected by the pandemic physically, but maybe economically. Now, what are the pains of exclusion? It's not only myself who have experienced about it, but maybe generally all senior citizens and those 21 years under. The prohibition of senior citizens to go out is also the most difficult situation, doubly difficult when the people who live by themselves and the only means of livelihood is, for instance, selling farm crops, but had to stop suddenly because of these restrictions for senior citizens to go out so that they can provide for their families' day-to-day needs. Well, I was told by my friend, Bae Lucy, who confided that living was already tough in Agusan del Sur for an older woman whose husband is a habal-habal driver to earn for a living. When they were asked to stay home, they felt devastated knowing that was their only source of income. These senior citizens felt they suddenly become useless when they are still earning enough for their living. May I share with you the effects of the GCQ, the general quarantine and the enhanced quarantine restrictions to go out only on number of days, and only those who can go out are those with food and medicine pass. The day allocated for food and medicine pass for a 72-year-old lady hindered her to go out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This is a true story. When she needs to go out to buy her medicine on a Wednesday or Monday, she is prohibited. What if that is the only day that the money is available for them on a Monday and they need it on a Tuesday? And that is, another experience was that when we were queuing at the mall in Davao City, just before I was quarantined, I heard a conversation between a young lady and a guard. She was in her 20s when she's living alone with her mother, whose father is an overseas worker. The young lady insisted to get inside the mall where the medicine of her lactating mother is sold at a lower price. But the guard strongly prohibited her from entering. Otherwise, he said, he will be terminated from work if she is allowed. The young lady cried because her mother was waiting for her medicine. But the guard has also to be true to his duty, otherwise they will be terminated. Now, another experience is that Dato Apan of Region 12 can attest that life was already difficult for them because at that time, the Tagabawa Manobo tribes in Region 12 were affected by the earthquake, and before they were able to return to their community, COVID came. So they have not completely recovered from living in the evacuation centers because of the devastations left by the strong earthquakes. And so they were baffled when COVID pandemic was pronounced by the World Health Organization. Another Tiduray IP women elder, once this issue raised as more alarming than the COVID. COVID can kill her alone, but this land grabbing and continuing land grabbing and intrusions to their ancestral domain by mining, IFMA and armed groups hinder farming economic activities. The Blaans are divided on the issue of issuance of FPIC, a large mining company given permit amid the torments of pandemic. The IPs fear the possible perdition and the connectedness to their ancestral domain and nature, thereby can eradicate the entire race. This older woman worries that the government has not given full ownership of their ancestral domain despite the laws recognizing it. Now, what are the interventions of the government and non-government organizations? It is not all negative experience for some in this pandemic. A Blaan older woman shared a video recognizing the help for senior citizens in their own province in Cotabato or North Cotabato and South Cotabato. Some of them shared their predicament in the way relief services were distributed. Their family were given 2 kilos of rice to feed them in 2 to 3 weeks. Yet they were happy and they never complained. Some IP communities conducted relief operations by themselves. Like in our own experience, we also had that in our own community. Women whose advocacy is caring and preserving culture and nature in Daraguyan, for instance, in Malaybalay and in Songko, Lantapan, in Bukidnon, they had their own relief services coordinated with the NGOs and LGUs. Bai Inatlawan from Daraguyan believes that COVID was caused by the violation of human beings against the laws of nature, and the earth is pained and has too much of these violations to bear. In unison, another woman and NGO who also served in the IP community and also a board member of APO Governance and Indigenous Leadership Academy also believed that the pandemic stems from the abuses of human being against nature and man's nature to care for magbabayas creations. Both women believe that there is some disarray in the sacred balance between man and nature, so that a ritual to ask for forgiveness to mend that disarray and restore the balance was necessary. Thus, while a non-IP community rely on face masks, soaps, Western technology, and science in coping against the catastrophe, both by COVID-19 pandemic The women elders turned to ritual to ask for forgiveness from Magbabaya to restore the harmony of man and nature. Ironically, we know of LGUs who put incentives more extravagant, using their COVID allocations of millions to purchase rice distributed to the populace even without being infected with COVID. While this may sound helpful for some, it can be perceived to be politically motivated because the frontliners complained of medical and food supply. Why give rise to the entire population of the municipality when there had been no local transmission of COVID-infected people in that area? What if COVID suddenly infect constituents and the money has been spent for ration to people who are able and sound to work? Now, I have these recommendations for inclusiveness. There had been no information materials written in the language understandable to the indigenous peoples. There is thus the need to develop language-appropriate learning materials on COVID to be distributed in IP communities. NGOs can help the government on this end. Maybe we can craft a mechanism and develop a program specific to IP for their social and services or activities and well-being, where there is a dire need to institutionalize medical and health services for IP communities, so that there is a need to reorganize and help strengthen IP's role in developing and using the indigenous knowledge systems and practices on health. The government should also recognize the role, support, and participation of non-government institutions with social services on health, and to develop, create, and provide a venue for the women and the indigenous peoples in general to socialize, share their rules, experiences, and visions for their family and community, and enhance connectedness as they reach the edge and embrace their journey back to their life. Babo Angelina of the Mansaka tribe said, if science will consider and acknowledge that all medicines invented were conceptualized from the traditional knowledge, indigenous peoples who are keepers of the said knowledge would have been beneficial. Government and NGOs are enjoined to help the IPs develop their technologies. The government should support the culture-based development of the ancestral domain with the community as owner managers rather than allow it for contracting by big corporations, as it defeats the purpose of genuine recognition of their ownership. In parting, may I request the government to look into the appropriate culture-based solution to sustain peace and development in helping disadvantaged communities, be it policy, advocacy, development services, and social programs. Lastly, maybe we can invite ourselves to reflect that if other sectors of the society with high income or those that have easy access to all levels of medical and social services and living in abundant life still find it very difficult during this pandemic, how much would it be extremely horrible than the situation of the indigenous peoples? How much could it be more difficult than knowing that life is already hard and indescribable in terms of economy, medical and health services, and social opportunities even before COVID? I do not know of any word to describe how difficult it has been for them and how it will become extremely hard under this what they call new norm. Thank you to all of you and paadyaw.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Norma, for the very substantive presentation. Now we shall proceed to give our speakers a chance to ask questions to each other or give additional input to the talk that was already presented, now referring to the four presenters. We have allotted 30 minutes for this panel discussion. Who would like to go first among the presenters? You may give additional inputs or you can ask questions to each other. Miss City, Miss Star, Dato Ricky, Ma'am Norma, You have the chance to talk to each other or ask questions, or you may add also input. There may be topics that you have missed that you want to add on.
Yeah. Can I, Philip?
Anybody?
Yes.
Yeah, go
It,
ahead. Go ahead.
I hope others will not wonder why I was talking of the ancestral domain, the one that was shared by
Ma'am Norms?
yes, yes. I was saying that I think I know that we're talking of the COVID, the as a pandemic, and
We may
yet
have a
I think I
problem
mentioned
with the
about
connection
the
ni Ma'am
preservation of
Norms.
the
Can
environment
others come in?
worldwide.
Yes. Loud and clear po yung kay Ma'am Norma.
Unclear daw.
Sige, go ahead. Go ahead po.
Sige, Ma'am
Philip?
Norma.
Sir Philip, I think Ma'am Norma is still online. She already had started talking.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Ma'am Norma,
Okay.
please go ahead. Ma'am Norma. Um, I think now she's having technical problems.
Mm.
Ma'am Norma, please
Okay na
go
po.
ahead.
Yes,
You're
yes.
back na po.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I understand that this is only about COVID, exclusion and inclusion. This is about the pandemic, but I think I mentioned about what was raised by other members of the indigenous communities, the one which was shared to me by a Teduray IP woman saying that as for COVID, it can kill her alone, but to the continued land grabbing in ancestral domain by mining corporations, IFMA, and the presence of armed groups would hinder farming and economic activities and thereby can kill the race, not only herself. So I think I have to raise that because I know that people are just so concentrated with COVID, but there are other things that can kill people, that can kill the connectedness of the indigenous peoples to their ancestral domain and the environment. Okay na? Yes. Thank you. That's all.
For this representation, can I share also, considering that the vulnerability of young manobos in the hinterland, in the remotest barangays, they are actually the target of the armed group, especially in the recruitment. Considering that the vast ancestral land are not yet being titled. For example, in our place in Agusan del Sur, this is the largest ancestral domain, which is still the CADTI process is still pending. So when this ancestral domain will not be reached by infrastructure projects and development by LGUs and the national government, it remains that the IPs in the remotest or hinterland, especially the young men, they are really vulnerable in the recruitment of armed group. So when this Manobo, Higaunon, Banwaon, Talaandig tribe will be recruited by the armed group, it is sad to say that when the military focus the recruitment to some IP, indigenous peoples quota, in the recruitment of the military. And these young manobos were recruited or joined the armed group in the hinterland. This is the big problem, that when there are encounters by the government troops and in the remotest areas, it is sad to say that it is against IP against IP. Manobo versus Manobo, Higaonon versus Higaonon, uh, Banwaon versus Banwaon, and Talaandig versus Talaandig, or even Mamanwa in Caragar, in some parts of Surigao del Sur and Surigao del Norte. So this is the one point that this representation would like to stress, that infrastructure projects to ancestral domain, the titling of the certificate of ancestral domain title. For example, in our province, the biggest ancestral domain now pending is the direct CADTE application of the Manubo tribe in Loreto, Agusan del Sur, covering about 74,000 hectares. So that is one item or one subject matter that I would like to raise on this peace conference forum. Thank you. Salamat, Yotibo.
Thank you very much, Sir Ricky. Shall we hear from Ma'am Star?
Oh, yes. Well, I actually have this. I was addressed this question by Father Randy. So
Um,
his question was, if I could elaborate on the specific instances and situations or experienced by Muslims. And yes, I could, not just speaking from my personal experiences, but also from the narratives of the young people that we have engaged, especially Muslim youth. And one of this is probably one of the most notable narratives that I've ever heard. And this is when in Tawi Tawi, in a specific university, this is actually the biggest university in Tawi Tawi, Muslim youth are being profiled. So they're being identified who among these students are Muslims, and they are being identified for the purpose of targeting them for recruitment to violent extremist organizations. So it has become that, how do we say this one, that I don't know, that established, that to the point that they do have this and they really had to profile Muslim students at that. Another instance would be, of course, everyone would know this one. This was when in Manila, Muslim students were profiled for the reason of their PCVE, prevention and countering violent extremism efforts. So this is another narrative, which proves that there is this othering. But of course, we're going beyond this. Even I myself, I do have personal experiences that I could also share. Being one here, I also put it here in the question and answer. Experiencing even small things like I'm feeling and experiencing stricter security checks and measures when I enter public establishments like malls or terminals, and these things similar to these experiences. So yes, and I do think that a lot of our youths as well are also experiencing these same kind of, how do we say this one, feeling of of othering. Although many actually have already gotten used to this one, but I do think that nobody ever has to get used to that. I am making that as a statement. Nobody ever has to get used to being othered. And I speak in behalf of the Muslim youth, specifically at this one. So yeah, I'm really thankful that this platform was given so we could share our thoughts on it as well. Thank you very much.
um, Thank you very much, Ma'am Star. Now let's hear Miss City. Please unmute po, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
okay. I just would like to add, yes, about a concern of our local people. No? It's not just about the Bajau families, but even the Tausug, no, indigenous people. So they have this concern about a difficulty of daily living because they can just go out, no, to look for means to do their ordinary livelihood activities wherein, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. Now, especially for the Bajau communities, they used to go out fishing, and at this time, because of restrictions, and in addition to our income, previously we had our typhoon, so they really raised their concerns that daily living is really very difficult at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay. Um, thank you very much, Miss City, Ma'am Norma, Ma'am Star, and Sir Ricky.
Yes.
Thank you for the additional inputs that you have given on the topic. At this point, we will entertain questions from our participants. We shall now come to the open forum. For the open forum, the Zoom participants may write their questions in the chat box. For those who are participating through FB and YouTube Live, you may write your questions in the comment section. The Secretariat will keep track of your questions and will forward it to us. Please indicate to whom you want to address the question. You can only ask one direct question, very concise question, and if needed, one follow-up question. Okay, so I think we already, Mom Star already had answered one question that came from Father Andy. So here we have another question from an anonymous participant. I think any one of you can answer this. The question goes, are all the government officials aware on what to do in terms of the indigenous peoples being recruited by the bandits? Is there a way or are there ways to prevent this particular situation? So who would like to go first?
I will answer first.
Yes, Sir Ricky.
Yeah, actually, I have written it in the dashboard. Yes, the government authorities are aware of this situation. Uh, that's why the solution which I would like to recommend is that fast track infrastructure projects, especially roads and bridges and social services. In the social services such as education and health in the identified areas. Okay, by so doing, the bandits will have no areas to stay with because these ancestral domains were being stayed by these bandits or armed group. No? So when there are already roads and bridges crisscrossing one IP territory to other territory, and when there are schools, health services provided, the IPs in the remotest areas or in the country areas will realize that the government is responding to their needs or immediate needs. And when development in the IP in the country areas is already in place, education will be provided, and then comes a time that the IP young men and women will be educated. So they themselves will be the one to campaign, not to join any of these armed groups. That's my
Okay.
answer to the question.
Anyone who would like to add to that?
Yeah,
Norma.
I would like to add to that because
Yes, Ma'am Norma.
oh yeah, sorry.
Yes,
Yes,
so
I think I can. Okay, I can speak for two. Like in Davao City,
Ma'am Norma. Oh, she has technical problem again. Ma'am Star, I think you're saying something. Sorry for that.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I think speak for the efforts being done by the Maguindanao government at that local government unit to be specific. We just had actually just spoke for a PCV conference led by the by the Ministry of Public Order and Safety of the BARM, and one of the speakers there was also their local, how do you say, coordinator on their action plan for prevention and countering of violent extremism. And so I just really wanted to everyone here listening to know that these are being undertaken by our local government units. There are action plans being developed and are just waiting for implementation, and these actually also rooted from the national action plan that was developed, initiated by the United Nations Development Program and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes. However, the problem was that the local government units felt like they weren't consulted. And so they started developing more contextualized versions and more localized versions of the NAP PCVE. And by the way, the NAP PCVE was also influential influential in the Philippine administration. So it's these steps are being done, and our local government units are also trying to, how do we say this one, clusterize their own borders, their own territories, just to make sure that the conflict conflict facets in their community is addressed well and contextualized according to their needs. So yeah.
Thank you, Ma'am Star. Ma'am Norma, you have the
I
floor.
was about to say that I'm going to share my experience with the two LGUs, one in Davao City and in our own hometown.
Hi, ma'am. Oh. Yes,
Okay.
Ma'am Norma.
Uh, Sorry for the intermittent signal.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
our LGU is doing, not only with regards to the response to the LCAC, but we have identified the LGUs in our hometown has already identified areas which are really vulnerable to the armed groups. And right now, there is this coordinated implementation of projects between our local
There she goes again. Oh, she's lost.
Sorry
Yes,
again.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sige
Ah,
po.
uh, our LGU is really doing a lot with the Congress with and the provincial government. And as Dr. Ricky said, they're actually constructing roads and bridges, opening Davao Oriental, Compostela Valley, Davao del Norte, and Agusan, I think. And so I think we're implementing not only about the government's um, project on the
Sorry for that. I think Ma'am Norma has really intermittent signal, so let's proceed with the next question. Ma'am Norma, are you still there? Hello? Okay, so while waiting for Ma'am Norma to reconnect, let's ask the next question from Sir Bong Baybado of UST. To Sir Ricky, you mentioned three types of manobos: traditional, half mainstream, and full mainstream. Is this not the same as profiling, categorizing, and inherently a way of doing exclusion too?
Okay, thank you. Actually, I am typing my answer, no? The types of the manobos are categorized by our council of elders, but it doesn't mean to exclude them from all of these uh, happening in the community or in the society. But mainly, these types is telling the participants for their information the very situation of the manobos, which strategically these manobos are located. If we say the traditional, they are from manobos from the remotest barangay, hinterland areas, which one household to another is about not not it's is 1 kilometer apart, the distance of their neighbors, no. So it doesn't mean to exclude them, but it tells the participants that the situation of this IP, like the half mainstream manobos, who live in the rural areas and urban areas, many of them are living in these areas because they they wanted to evade the armed conflict or encounters of government troops in the remotest areas. And for example, the full mainstream, they are the manubos who are living in the highly urbanized cities and in other countries. Because, as we know, the four major tribes in Caraga region, the Manobo is the largest population. And because of this population, many of these attend education, already professional and educated in all in all aspects of professions. Uh, some of them were already working in the other countries and working in the highly urbanized cities. Some of them are construction workers, for example. Some of them are domestic helper in Metro Manila, Cebu. Some of them are working in the markets, no? Some of them are working as domestic helpers in other countries. So they are the full mainstream who who can no longer practice their traditional practices. Unlike with the half mainstream and traditional, even if they are already educated, yet they still observe that practices and tradition. That's all po.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Ricky. Sir Bong, I hope Sir Ricky was able to answer your question. Okay. For Ma'am City and Ma'am Star Lamalan, um, how are the Mandayas doing in general during this time of COVID-19 pandemic? Their number of mortality and coping up to present. This is a question from Miss Janina Alfante of FSUU. Let's start with Ma'am City being a healthcare worker.
For the current current statistics or data, is it that it's is the question mean that rate? Come again, ma'am. Come again.
Um, the question is, how are in your group, the SAMAs, doing in general during this time of COVID-19 pandemic? The number of mortality and coping up to present. How are they coping up?
Okay, I'm speaking in behalf of the Sama tribe, no, in Tawi-Tawi. So far, I came from Lang Tabawan. Our case in South Tubian Tabawan is really, I think, zero case of the pandemic because they really secured from the coming in of those travelers that are coming from Bungao or other neighboring provinces, including those from Malaysia, no, because we are in the boundary. And then those coming from Malaysia are being really quarantined for 14 days in that area. Then after 14 days, so they can mingle with other residents in Tabawan. So far we do not have case, no, in Tabawan in my case. Now I'm here in Sulu. So far with the Bajau community is the same. They are in the island municipality, so they really secured the coming, no, the incoming of the other residents from other communities. So far in Holo, the the number of case is a little bit increasing. So that's why the government and the frontliners, the interagency task force of Holo is really securing the neighboring municipalities to really be strictly implementing the health protocols so that we can contain really the number of
Okay.
cases of COVID here in the town of Holo. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am. Ma'am Star, would you like to add very briefly?
Yeah, just very quickly, maybe this is not meant to be like Mandaya, correct? If it's
Yeah.
if I
Yeah,
could
for
talk
your
from the,
group.
from the Moro side, um, this is probably, I don't know if it's supposed to be a good news, but um, just this was October 20, the end of October lang na data that the BARM in general ranks lowest for COVID-19 cases in the Philippines. So this has really to do with the um measures that was undertaken right away. And maybe it was really also because these areas are usually it's not easily accessed, and it's also within just adjacent to provinces and regions like region 12 Soxargen, these regions that have really implemented strict quarantine protocols even before the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think that's really just one news that I could say with regards to that message, to that question rather. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question I think is for Sir Ricky. Very quickly, how do you describe or how resilient are the IP communities in Agusan, especially in terms of accessing education? Sir Ricky,
Uh, yeah,
we're talking
resiliency in
about the
terms
access to
of
education. Yeah, in terms of access to education po,
okay,
how
okay.
do you describe the
Uh,
resiliency of
it's
the
it's
IP communities?
actually the in education they are the heavily affected. So if talking of resiliency, they cannot actually. In fact, the enrollment is has a sudden decrease of enrollment because in the remotest areas, considering that there are no gadgets, no signal in the remote areas, and they cannot they prefer the IP communities. Their parents prefer not to send their children to school because of the absence of these IT gadgets and all. So
Okay.
they are not resilient. They cannot. The effect is very sad because the IP children only few have enrolled in the remotest barangays,
Yeah.
remotest school,
Yeah, that
and
question comes
the
from Sir
the
Alvin.
the the teachers it is very hard for them uh, to walk to go to the IP homes for the modules because of the distance and no roads, no bridge. So that's the very reason why IPs are left behind in terms of education during this pandemic.
So thank you, Sir
Thank you.
Ricky. That question came from Sir Alvin Pinedo, and he's an educator from Agusan del Sur. That's why he's asking about it. Um, for Ma'am Norma Gunos, from an anonymous participant, when you mentioned about the lack of information materials translated to Mandaya, plus the misunderstanding of the mobility restrictions, it seems that these experiences betray a certain lack of cultural sensitivity on the part of the implementers on the response against COVID. Your comment on this, please, ma'am. Ma'am Norma?
Yes, yes. I wasn't able to hear the last sentence.
It seems that these experiences betray a certain lack of cultural sensitivity on the part of the implementers on the response against COVID. Your comment on this po?
Um, Maybe partly yes, but maybe they were also caught or they were taken aback by the sudden
You're back po, ma'am.
partly yes, but all of us knew that all LGUs, all frontliners were taken aback by the sudden pandemia. And partly yes, um, because, well, no, maybe we lack we lack reminder also from our end, the indigenous peoples professionals in Caraga, in Davao Oriental, and we were not able to work hand in hand with our IPNR, I think, in requesting them to come up with a culture-based information material where the indigenous peoples can easily understand what COVID is. And but I think NCIP is now doing a lot of information materials. I heard, but I haven't seen it. But maybe yes, they're doing it. In maybe they find it difficult because we have different IP communities, we have different languages, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you po, ma'am. Next question is, I think this is for Ma'am Fatima or anyone who would like to answer this question. How are the youth included in the action plans and response by the state and non-government organizations?
Yeah, so now that our local government units are realizing more and more the how do you say this? The importance of including the youth, of consulting the youth, and how the youth um contribute to the work that we do even in the government. Our SKs, the Sangguniang Kabataan, these councils are given much more importance, and they're being assigned actual roles. So this is actually a good news. So I think the answer to that is really the the capacity development of the SKs in this regard. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you po, ma'am.
May
Anyone
I
would
add?
like to
May
add
I
on
add?
that? Yes, sir, Ricky po.
I would like to add. Yeah, thank you. So yes, that's the Sangguniang Kabataan. But for me, I would like to include the IP professional because this Sangguniang Kabataan, many of them are not yet have not yet finished schooling. So when this SK mixed with this IP professional nowadays, I believe they can be they can be part of the solution to the problem. Identify the IP professional
Okay.
because we are very proud to say that as of this time, we already have list of IP professionals without job. Uh, Many of them went to abroad, went to other highly urbanized cities and highly urbanized cities for work not related to their job. They are not actually, there is no program of the government to identify the placement of jobs for IP professionals. Thank you po.
So thank you very much, Sir Ricky. We have participants from the government agency. I think it's a call. It's a call from our IP professionals, young professionals,
Yeah.
for our leaders to take action on this. Thank you very much. This one is more of a comment, and I think this is from Dino Pineda. I feel that it is important to listen to the IPs during this new normal because it allows us to imagine a reality that is very different from ours. A reality that in many ways is superior to ours. At a time when we're relying so much on Western methods in battling COVID 19, the IPs sharing their experience to us allows us to see another that is flourishing and working in their own way. And maybe we don't need so much impose a view that the IP should keep up with city folk, or that they are disadvantaged and start believing, trusting that they are fine on their own, that they are autonomous and capable of handling their pandemic, left and that they are left on their own. Um, there's a request here for Sir Ricky to make a comment on this.
Okay. Uh, I am typing my answer actually. Come again, ma'am.
Your views po, when you said that we're going to have the IPs keep up with city folk, or that they are disadvantaged and parang they start to believe and trust that they are fine on their own, that they are autonomous and capable of handling this pandemic on their own. So any comment on this po from the point of
Yes.
views of the
Yeah, yeah,
Manobos in
yeah.
Agusan?
Yeah. Uh, this is one thing which is not being unconsciously disregarded by local government units. Remember that there are already IPMR, or Indigenous Peoples Mandatory Representatives, in LGUs, local government units, barangay, municipality, and province. The missing link is that these IPMRs were not included, or were not moving by these LGUs to handle these government aids and services during pandemic. My idea is that mobilize these IPMRs in LGUs, call the Council of Elders, give them the necessary government and services, have them the list, the government provide, then entrust those aids and services to these Council of Elders and IPMRs, then let them do the job. That's all.
So thank you, sir. Next question is for Miss Fatima. When you mention discrimination and the incidence of negative perception against the Muslims, it appears that this too is general and that it includes all non-Muslims. In your experience and research, may I ask what sector of society or who are the Filipinos with a high incidence of negative perception against the Muslims? This is a question from an anonymous participant.
All
Ma'am,
right.
your comment on this?
Okay, thank you so much for this one. Yeah, I'm really thankful that you raised this one, because I also wanted to clarify that by making a statement that Muslims are experiencing, situations where they're othered or made feel that they're being stigmatized, I didn't mean to tell that it is non-Muslims who are doing this one. It's also because even within our culture, we are having intra-cultural issues that we also need to settle amongst ourselves, because just for the information of everyone, even within Moros, we are subdivided into 13 different tribes, not even mentioning reverts and other new ethnic groups that are, coming out in modern times. And so I would say that this kind of situation doesn't really just affect Muslims, but could also affect other people as well. um and it's not, I'm not trying to say that Muslims should have the victim mentality, because I do think that, and I would always push for the I'll always push for the idea that we as a people, as a minority, should be more on pushing that we are part of the solution and not of the problem. And so thank you so much for raising this one. I just also really wanted to clarify that one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Fatima. Um, Ma'am Norma, would you like to add on this po?
I wasn't able to catch up. Sorry.
You haven't heard po.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the discrimination and incidence of negative perception against the Muslims. May we ask what sector of society or who are the Filipinos with the high incidence of negative perception against the Muslims? If you're going to share something about this.
of not with the Maya community or closely in contact with the Kalagan people in Davao Oriental. We work hand in hand. We
Sorry, there she goes again. Okay, so let's, I think Ma'am Norma really has a problem in connectivity. So let's proceed to the next question. This one is from Sir Wilson Urios of Our Lady of Assumption College in Laguna. How will we define indigenous peoples, and what is the role or are the roles of these indigenous peoples in resource conservation? Sir Ricky, would you like to answer this? So, how
I
do you
think I've
define
answered that.
indigenous peoples?
I believe I have answered that. How will you, okay. That's it. So, how we will define indigenous people? In the book, in the Republic Act 8371, there is already a definition of the IPs in that book, RA 8371. But basically, that's the definition of how the government perceive the IPs. But for us, IPs in IP communities, our definition of indigenous people is that very simple. Very simple. Our definition is that government services or government services must reach to our doorstep. No, it means to say that there are still communities in the hinterlands which are not yet reached by government services. So when these government services, infrastructure projects, health, education, reach to the farthest areas, if the government or private institution can provide this, then we can define the indigenous people as the IP who is not IP who are no longer vulnerable, IP who can stand by themselves, IP which rights are being respected, and which ancestral domain are being respected. Our culture must be respected, because in the IPRA law, as if I have to assess the implementation of IPRA law in our territories, it seems to us that hindi ganon katindi yung pagtingin ng government sa IPs, even if meron na kaming batas. Ganon po yung masasabi ko dyan.
Yeah, I think there is a related question to that, Sir Ricky. Yes, who's that? Hello? My related question po dito, because you were talking about infrastructure projects, he's just curious about the opinions and sentiments of IPs in deciding for infrastructure projects. Your comment on this po. So, what are your opinions and sentiments of how IPs gathered, or how do they help in deciding for infrastructure projects to be implemented in your area po?
Yeah. Even if there are already indigenous people's mandatory representatives in barangays, municipalities, and provinces, but because of they are not yet undergone seminars and trainings on policy making, on understanding this government services and assistance, hindi sila makakonect sa plano ng government mula sa tribal communities, hindi nila ma-connect doon. Even if nandyan na sila, pero pagdating sa mga discussions and deliberations, parang na ano pa rin sila, parang na-inferior pa rin sila. So if ang government tinitingnan yung kapakanan ng CADTE areas or IP communities in the CADTE areas, dapat yung ADS DPP, yung Ancestral Domain Sustainable Development Plan na ginawa bago magkaroon ng title or CADTE, yung CADTE areas or yung IP community, dapat sa policy making ng barangay, municipal at provinces, dapat sa policy making, titingnan ngayon yung ADS DPP. Kung ano sa annual budget ng LGU or national government ang nakakonek doon sa ADS DPP. Kasi yung ADS DPP, yun yung buong plano ng tribal community sa ancestral domain, papaano nila ma-manage yung resources nila. Pero ang nangyari, meron ngang aklat, makapal. Makapal yung aklat ng ADS DPP. Pero in terms of planning, budgeting in the government from local level up to the national level, hindi po magkatugma yung mga identified programs and projects. So yan yung yan yung enlightenment ko diyan sa tanong. Thank you po.
Thank you po, Sir Ricky. Welcome back, Sir Philip. Okay, so
thank you.
Yes, sir. There is a specific question here from Dr. Third Midwife can answer this. May we know, or maybe Sir Ricky, because this pertains to the Manobo tribe and the other IPs, may we know how is the treatment and or traditional practices of pregnant mothers in Manobo tribe and other IP people or IP communities during this pandemic?
Okay.
Ma'am City from among the Sama tribe, being a registered midwife po. Naka-mute po kayo, ma'am.
Okay, hi again and salam. In our community, as a midwife in the remote community, the practice of mothers, of pregnant mothers, especially during this pandemic, is enhanced of being what they do as usual in the area, because there is a limitation in going to health center because pregnant women are now prohibited. They have to limit their moving out from home because they are vulnerable. Now at home, what we did is we do some home visitation to assess, and then if referral is needed, they will be referred to the nearest barangay health center so that they will be given appropriate intervention in terms of pregnancy, in terms of vaccination, in terms of health education, and eventually at time of delivery, everybody is required to deliver in the health facility, because that would be also to encourage the participation of mothers to deliver in the health facility to prevent the rate of maternal mortality and infant mortality. Thank you.
Okay, may I add?
Yes, Sir Ricky.
Okay, thank you. So remember that the typology of the Manobo tribe, the traditional, the half mainstream and full mainstream. For the half mainstream and full mainstream, they of course have the access to government services such as birthing clinics. We know that LGUs are putting up birthing clinics in barangays. So basically, these pregnant women regularly visits to these birthing clinics and rural health units. But in the remotest barangay, pregnant women in the remotest barangay, these pregnant women still practice their traditional way of pregnancy. Whatever they believe in about pregnancy, kasi they have their they still practice to their old ways, their way of life. So, nandun pa rin sila. Kasi at the time of at the time of giving birth, they can no longer go to the barangay health center for considering the distance, because no roads, no bridges. They shall walk 5 to 10 hours. For example, the list is 5 hours walking from the remotest to the health centers. Maybe along the way they can deliver the baby. So better traditionally they just give birth in their tribal house, in their homes in the upland.
Okay. Thank you very much, Miss City and Sir Ricky. I think we ran out of time for our open forum. Okay, if you have written your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A portion of the Zoom, so we would like to ask our speakers to answer those questions through the chat box. So let's now proceed to the next part. After hearing the answers of our speakers on the questions raised by our participants, so we would like to hear your closing message, your final words po with regards to the topic at hand. So shall we hear from Ma'am Norma, Sir Ricky first, and then followed by Ma'am Fatima, and Ma'am City, and then Ma'am Norma last. Okay, Sir Ricky,
Okay,
please.
thank you. This is a message to the government, because I, being also a municipal councilor in our municipality, I have observed how the IPMRs, the Council of Elders, connect themselves or play with the local government officials. So the what do you call this? The full trust, parang kulang pa po yung yung pag mobilize ng mga tribal and IP communities, kasi in terms of LGU services, ang nangunguna lagi dyan frontliners are the LGU officials and the services or offices under the executive department, and of course the legislative department. So sila po yung nandun. Kung may mga IPs, sumasama lang sila doon. Pero in terms of giving them entrust to them this government aid and services to the IPMRs and the Council of Elders, because they have their indigenous political structure. May structure sila. May traditional self-governance sila. So entrust, the LGU entrust this aid and assistance to the Council of Elders and IPMRs, then let them implement this to the IP communities. So yun yung missing link na pwede namin sabihin sa government na bakit nga po nandyan kami sa policy making body, sa local legislative council. Pero pagdating po sa pagbibigay ng mga government service assistance niyan, parang sumasama lang kami sa convoy. Nandun lang kami, parang observer lang kami. Hindi namin na-feel o nakita na pag meron itong mga government assistance services during the pandemic, kami po yung talagang nagbibigay ng face mask, nagbibigay ng face shield, nagbibigay ng mga gamot, nagbibigay doon sa aming mga communities. Sino yung gumagawa dyan? Yung DSWD, yung mga frontliners na identified ng LGU. See? Kasi meron kaming political structure meron kaming self-governance. Let us do the job. Ganun po yung masasabi ko. Thank you.
Thank you po, Sir Ricky. Now let's hear Miss Fatima.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would first like to thank everyone. No, it's it's really hard to adapt to the virtual settings that we have right now. But even our speakers right now are having difficulties with their internet connection and stuff, and still we are here. So really with much courtesy and gratitude to the Fathers Saturnino Urios University and their partners from the GIZ, of course, for making this possible and for giving us a platform to have this mini intercultural forum right here, and for everyone who witnessed this forum this afternoon. So what I would just like to say as my final words would be that, aside from my representation here, coming from the Moro side, coming from my identity as a Maguindanaoan, I'm also here as a 23-year-old who implores everyone who could, possibly listen to this message. Let us all work together. Let us all synergize. Let us all coordinate our efforts, because we all have one common goal. We have our one common home, which is Mindanao. And let's just please finally fulfill the promise that is Mindanao. We can work together to do this one. And of course, I really implore everyone as well. Let's work across borders and cultures, across our differences and across our beliefs. So that's just it. Good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much po, Miss Fatima. Now let's hear Miss City for your closing message po.
Yes, I would like, first of all, I would like to thank and congratulate Father Saturnino Orange University, the host, and all the participants, the speakers. This is an opportunity really to hear some insights, no, from the sharing. And what I can say is that it's really good not to really work hand in hand, be in the public, private sector, the local government, the civic society organization, the grassroots people. We have to really participate, give our contribution in our little own way, whether be it big, small. So by way of participation, by way of contribution, we can really achieve our goal, and we can help out to the big, not to the biggest, for the good of everyone, especially at this time of pandemic. So we have to really help one another. We have to really look into our strength, and for that strength, we have to improve it. For those weaknesses that we identify, we have to really develop it, and develop our strength, so that our weaknesses, so that it becomes a strength. Now, for the participation, so as in behalf of Notre Dame Mobolo College, we are the non-government organization. We really give our best to really contribute to our society, so that we can have, a better place and healthy place to live in. So regardless of who we are, for the Thai people of Sulu and Tawi Tawi, we really work as one. We have to really work as one, and we will be working as one. So that would be all. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think Ma'am Norma Gunos has lost her connection. So it has been worthwhile listening to the exchange of ideas and the messages of our speakers this afternoon. As a conference on peace, the Mindanao Peace Studies Conference entertains members of different sectors, offices, organizations, and programs operating in society. It is non-partisan and practices inclusivity of voices and perspectives from multiple disciplines. The challenge it hopes to put forward is against divisive politics, narrow discourse towards unity, and working together. So at this point, may I ask Sir Philip Anghag for the summary and synthesis of this forum. Sir Philip.
Okay. Good afternoon once again. There are at least five main discussion lines or discourses that I would like to highlight from the presentations and from the exchanges in the open forum. But before going into the five, one recurring theme, no, being disconnected and reconnected, no, it brings a lot of frustration, and it highlights the theme of this discussion, no, inclusion and exclusion. What appears to me now is that although we are in the same platform in this web, we are differently situated. No, again, we have to use English as a language for us to understand, but on the process also, um, some of the indigenous people, so maybe are participating either through YouTube or Facebook, may possibly be missing out in the whole discussion. No? Okay. The first one that I take note of is the discussion on positionality. Um, Dr. Ricky spoke about Loreto and showed pictures about Kasapa. Kasapa is very in the periphery, no? and it shows how people are. He said that the effects are less felt in that area, but there are vulnerabilities in terms of education and in the economic situation. No, Star presents that she is presenting from Davao, but their work covers Tawi-Tawi up to Zamboanga, the south of Mindanao up to the north. No, Ma'am Norma spoke of going home from Davao, going to Oriental, no, to her birthplace to escape the ravages of the pandemic. No, Ma'am Seti talks about her work in Tawi-Tawi and also of the Bajau communities in another far-flung area of Sulu. So in that sense, our positionality shows that the indigenous peoples who are working, or the Muslim communities we are working, are differently situated. No, so being aware of our positionality and efforts bring to light the problems we are facing. In terms of origin, Dato Ricky or Sir Ricky talks about linking the Manobo in Agusan to the bigger identity, no, that of being Malay, no. That remains unexplored at the moment, but he spoke about colors, no, the dynamisms or the diversity of the Manobo in Agusan. Um, Star, as I said, talks about being now working in Davao, but the identity, the roots of she is from is really showing in the whole discourse. No? Going now into the third point, the effects. All the speakers spoke of the different effects that the pandemic has brought to a lot of people. No, Sir Ricky talks about emphasizes education, and I think in all the presentation, the focus is on when communities, indigenous communities, are connected to political institutions or to the structure of the state or to economics. When these cord are cut because of an event, in this case pandemic, the impact are greatly felt. No, like Dr. Ricky spoke about being distant. He was talking about the bridge. No, he was talking about all this infrastructure. Children have to walk going to school. So in this sense, the effects of the pandemic are felt because the institutions that function as connectors before are now difficult to reach. No? In the open forum, several questions from our panel, from the audience, bring to light a lot of the need to understand. I took note a lot of discussions about tribes, not tribes. This course have to be problematized because it is also a way of framing. One doctor asked about the typologies that Ricky spoke, and I think that talking about typologies, talking about tribes are frames that we use to describe the others. And that brings me to the fourth point, no? The othering, no? The leaving behind, no? Typologies as a discourse, but I think what was emphasized in all the presentation is the role of economics. Economics as a structure, economics as a system that also shows how vulnerable people are. No? But I think Star offered a very good presentation about the diversity. On the one hand, Ma'am Norma talks about being focused on culture, no, and it is rightly so. But on the other hand, Start offered another frame, no, that looking of the diversity. She spoke about their efforts focusing on molding the youth, no, on forming future generations, notwithstanding one is a Muslim, a Christian, or as she said, may not have a certain belief system, no. And so that describes our frame of describing the others. On the way forward, may I use what Dato Ricky said, no, being rights based. He used a very descriptive word, no, a cry of one former leader. He said, all the cry focused on rights, no? And that is emphasized by Ma'am Norma talking about the role of culture, no? And in the discussion on the role of culture, she made mention of an elderly woman showing how to explain the pandemic. No? So the explanatory models for the pandemic are also can be found in culture. No? So beliefs are very important. All our speakers spoke about belief systems, whether indigenous, whether now of different faiths, but that is considered as very important. But on the other hand, diversity is emphasized, no, as a basis for molding future work. No? And other than the role of culture, the role of the youth is also emphasized, no, empowering the youth. Ma'am Norma adds on empowering women, empowering also the elderly, and these are important in molding the future generations. I think all these suggestions as a way forward, working with others, talking about collaboration, but focusing all our efforts on culture, no, as a culture base. I think from all the discussion, the strength of our cultures, the diversity of the approaches within cultures can be used in not only in combating the pandemic, no. As you emphasize, the pandemic changed the our usual work, no. Ma'am Seti talks about the works you've been doing, going in and out of the country, but all these are changed with pandemics. She mentioned that their area are mostly free from the pandemic, and thanks be to God for that. But in the end, it changed our world. And the important thing to look forward is how do we move forward? As you said, should be rights-based approach. It should be culture-based. It should be based on empowering the youth, but also catering to the needs of the elderly. No, and when that is done, we strengthen culture, we empower the youth, we empower also our elderly, then we would be in a better shape to combat not only this pandemic, but any other calamities that would come our way. These are just some of the notes that I took. Some are lost in the reconnecting, and apologies for that. And I just highlighted at least 5 points from the discussion. Okay.
Thank you po.
Um.
Thank you sa Father
Okay.
Saturnino Orius and Philippine Normal University. Mabuhay, Madadyo na Edo.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sir Philip.
Let
We
me
shall now
just.
proceed to the giving of certificates of participation to our speakers.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, just trying to. Okay. Let me allow me to read the certificates of appreciation for all our resource persons. The text reads, Father Saturnino Orius University, in partnership with Deutsche Gesellschaft for
Seminar.
Internationally Zusammenarbeit, presents this certificates of appreciation to all our speakers for the invaluable service and contribution as presenter in the webinar session on the Intercultural Forum during the Mindanao Peace Studies Conference 6 with the theme Peace for Mindanao in the New Normal, given this 23rd day of November 2020 at the Father Saturnino Orius University, Butuan City, Philippines. Signed, Gunhild Svitala, Roof, Principal Advisor, UCAP Program of GIZ. Signed also by Reverend Father Randy Jasper C. Odchige, Doctor of Sacred Theology, Vice President for Academic Affairs and Research, Father Saturnino Orius University. Signed also by Reverend Father John Christian Yu Yang, Doctor of Sacred Theology, President, Father Saturnino Orius University. The hard copies of the certificates will be mailed to you the soonest. Thank you very much. Let me turn you over to our facilitator, Ma'am Shirlene, for the photo op evaluation link and some other announcements.
Thank you very much, Sir Philip. Before we end our session, we would like to invite everyone to watch the next sessions of the conference tomorrow about peace building and anti-terrorism law, its contribution and continuing challenges. So for the participants, to receive your certificate of participation, we ask you to answer the evaluation through the QR code or link shared in the chat box and in the comment section for the FB Live participants. We will also be sharing the QR code or link on the screen. So there it is. So that ends the Intercultural Forum of the Mindanao Peace Studies Conference 6. We would like to acknowledge the lead partners of Mindanao Peace Studies Conference 6, Father Saturnino Urios University, GIZ, and we would also like to thank our partner schools for the assistance in inviting our speakers this afternoon. Notre Dame of Holo College, Holosulu, through the efforts of Sir Darren Datiles, the Vice President for Academic Affairs, and Philippine Normal University Mindanao, Agusan del Sur, through the Executive Director and Provost, Dr. Elvira V. Chua. I would also like to thank all the participants this afternoon. Thank you very much for bearing all the limitations of this forum due to the internet connectivity of our speakers. And lastly, to our moderator, Sir Philip Anghag, for accepting our invitation to become part of this forum. Thank you very much, Sir Philip. Again, thank you very
Thank you,
much to
ma'am.
all our participants for your active participation. We hope to see you tomorrow for another series of webinars. Have a good and peaceful day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Salamat. Happiness. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much po.